Hello, everyone, and welcome to part two of the Kubernetes 129 release retrospective. Just a reminder to everyone that this meeting does fall under the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, which can kind of be summarized as be good to everyone. But I do encourage you to go read it for yourself, and if you have any questions or anything to report, you can email conduct@kubernetes.io. And with that, we will get started. I'm not going to go through the action items this time. We went through those last time, and there hasn't been any change in that list. Things are looking pretty good there. Um, and it doesn't look like we have any new items in the what went well from the previous retro, even though overall I do think things have gone well. Let's not take that as a bad sign that nothing new's been added there. Um, we do have some new items under what could have gone better though. I don't see Vyam on the call here. But it looks like he added something for test grid. But I think that's been captured already as an action item. Priyanka, do
Yeah,
you know anything about
uh,
this?
I can do a TLDR from what we have discussed in past releasing meetings. It's about for so in 129, the CI signal team actually started using another tool as well, um, apart from test grid and Brow in general, something called aggregated test. I don't recall the name of this tool. So this tool actually gives a better idea of how many flaky tests we have in a particular release cycle. Um, yeah. So the CI signal team for 129 started using this tool. They got better stats, and we had more flaky occurrences this cycle. And we also started more outreach about fixing them so that we pass less number of flakes to incoming cycles. That's not the case for 130 though, because we just started using this tool. So we actually got a bigger number of test flakes, which was kind of we were not able to how to say we were not able to identify them during the release cycle with our previous set of tools. So for 130 we are sending, I think, 12 flaky to 130. 129 we are sending 12 flaky to 130 release cycles, but I think for upcoming future cycles with the use of this particular tool, we'll have better precautionary steps we could take to fix them early in the release cycle. So I think, yeah, Vyom wanted to mention that.
Sounds good. All right. I know Kat was not able to make this time, but we've talked a little bit about having an exception request process for missing docs deadlines. And I know it's been talked, she brought it to the SIG docs meeting as well. Um, I do think it's something worth exploring, if only to kind of unify the exception process across the various sub teams. I think she kind of has a point in that, like, yeah, not having that process leads to folks kind of treating that deadline as a little bit more of a soft deadline than enhancements freeze and code freeze, and it's just as important for SIG docs for folks to be meeting this deadline as the others. So um I do think it's something worth exploring, and because of like how I don't think it has to be super heavyweight, and it could probably pretty easily be implemented next cycle. Priyanka, I see you've got a hand up.
I just wanted to ask, like, did any outcome came out of, or any action item came out of the early discussions Cat had with SigDocs folks?
I
Like,
think
are we doing that for 130 or
from
something like
SIG docs there was support for the idea there. I think they kind of agreed that it would be beneficial for them to have that deadline treated a little more seriously. Um, I don't know whether Grace and Kat plan to implement that for 1:30. I think they certainly could. Um, but I'd have to check. I'm not
Got
sure
it.
what their concrete plans are there.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Making like doing anything that makes people take the dog's deadline more seriously would be helpful, and I'll also try to maybe provide any help to Kat and Grace to make it a thing.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
I see Natalie added one here too. So we can touch on this one, and the release blog should have been reviewed and ready to merge before the release day deadline. So just some concerns there about the timing on that. Which I think it's a good takeaway. Um, Priyanka, I think, did you want to chat about this next?
Yes, and I think I have an update as well. So, brief on this particular issue is when we actually hit the cold freeze milestone for 129, there were a few occurrences where uh, the PRs which had LGTM and approved labels applied on them before code freeze but did not have the release milestone. Somebody from the milestone maintainers group applied that label without informing or without looping in release team, and the PRs were merged. Um kind of there was not really a problem with those PRs getting merged. The only concern was release team was not in loop. So there was a ask to create a process or maybe do some automated restrictions so that this does not happen, or maybe pruning the or cleaning the milestone maintenance group. Uh, Sasha created a tracking issue on Kubernetes SIG release that's linked down there. That's issue 2386, with whatever is the gist of this particular issue. And he also created a PR that was closed, I think, a week back with a few rounds of reviews and suggestions. But overall update is there is some work going on to make this a thing. Maybe the direction we are taking is creating it or including this process as part of a Prow plugin itself. Yeah, so there is some progress on this.
Yeah, I think plus one from me there. It's something that happens every release cycle. Someone ends up milestoning a PR and then it gets
Yeah.
merged. And it it can cause chaos. So yeah, I don't have anything to
Yeah.
add beyond like I think we could stand to um work with SIG release leads to get the milestone maintainers cleaned up because it's definitely like a with great power comes great responsibility thing. And I think it hasn't been that list hasn't been pruned in a while. So
Yeah, just a note, I think one of the reviews or feedback we got on the PR, the first PR, was also that people actually do want to have the milestone maintainer access. We are talking about leads from SIGs because they help us triaging those PRs that are really required to be merged. So there is going to be a bit of back and forth to actually understand what's going to be the final, the real fix for this. But uh, I think we'll end up doing something in a few weeks or maybe early next release. Yeah,
it's good.
plus one. Yeah.
All right. Don't see Nina on the call. But it looks like you actually added the outdated cap
Yeah.
issue descriptions one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this was also around the KEP honors when they opt in. I think it's a thing from all enhancement all release cycles we have with enhancements team, where enhancements team have to do a lot of back and forth to get the actual PRs associated with any particular KIP, or get a history of what has been done in past release cycles on on different on different graduation stages. So I think the idea was to enforce maybe updating the KIP issue description as part of the opt-in criteria checklist. I don't know how to do it better. So far, what has been done is Nina has created an umbrella tracking issue for including this as well as a few other improvements or enhancements rule in particular. But I'm open to any discussion if we can, if there could be something else done to make it a thing. It's again the docs problem. People do not take this particular thing seriously, that we need uh, information updated in the cap issue descriptions.
Sounds good. I know a bit about this next one. Defining the lead shadow responsibilities. I see you added it. Yeah. I see a few folks on this call that have served as lead shadow. Myself and Priyanka both included. And the role is a little weird. There's not really any defined responsibility, and depending on the cycle, there may be very little responsibility at all beyond leading the weekly meeting from time to time. I, I think that can stand to change. And there are probably things that we could do to actually structure that role such that it does prepare someone to lead in the future. I think the thing that I had been thinking about is potentially breaking out. So not altogether different than what enhancements does. Breaking out the SIGs, distributing the SIGs amongst the lead shadows, and then you could have whatever responsibility that pops up associated with a given SIG delegated to a lead shadow. That could take the form of last minute PRs, bug triage, anything like that. All of those things are going to be tied to a SIG through whatever code is triggering this. Could be a way to give the lead shadows a little bit more structure. Priyanka.
Yeah, I also had the same thought. I was thinking of actually using our enhancement sheet right away and
Mhm.
create like a lead shadow liaison column there. And once we have passed the enhancements freeze milestone, for example, we can divide all the gaps at least among four or how many lead shadows we have. Number one thing I think that will do is that particular lead shadow who is responsible for say 10 gaps, they will keep an eye on those gaps throughout the entire cycle across all different roles we have. Um, and another thing that I particularly felt um, around the end of the cycle, that I was not very much familiar with what all was happening as part of implementations, uh, like the features we that are included in 129 cycle, for example. I was not really aware what all went into all the caps that were opted in. So it would be a good exercise for lead shadows if they will have like a shorter subset of caps to just keep an eye on and maybe educate themselves on what is coming out of them. That could also come out as a better signal for comms team later on, while deciding on major themes or in general preparing for any other post-release engagement. So I can
Hi,
maybe add that to
Grace
lead
here.
chat. Hey.
Hi, sorry, yeah, I'm dialing in from the train station. So I think Xander brought up splitting up by six, and you're bringing up splitting up by cap. I think one thing we could consider is have the release lead shadow owned a release sub team. So for in something that they haven't done before, maybe. So maybe like if you primarily led docs, you can switch over and support enhancement and really see through the works of enhancement, and that way we can have someone looking out for progress of things like docs and comms, at the same time still becoming more familiar with the release team.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all these ideas. I think what I can do maybe is create a tracking issue for us to actually have one place for all these ideas, and maybe whatever we agree with, um, we can put them
Use
into the
the new
handbook.
board.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, put it in a tracking issue, add it to the board, and have a discussion there. And at the end of it, add it to the lead handbook itself. Uh, I think whatever we have already discussed can be a good exercise for maybe 130 right away, whatever few ideas we have already discussed. But yeah, that was the whole intention, to have some defined responsibility for lead shadows, so we can make use of the resources we have.
Cool. I think, yeah, that sounds good. Um, Next one, it looks like you and Mickey added, and that's addressing if enhancements in experience with the enhancements role is required for leading. From my view, no. Even though, like a lot of us that have led enhancements as well. I, you know, we don't want that to be like a hard and fast rule, right? Like, um, Cat, who's going to be leading next cycle, has not led enhancements or shadowed on enhancements even, and I think that's fine. So it's probably to the point being addressed here, it could be something that's good to call out in the documentation just because so many of us that led came from the enhancement sub team. So yes, we should document that that's not a requirement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think my intention behind adding this was just to have this discussion maybe on a recorded platform or somewhere to come back to where we are talking about it, that enhancements is definitely not a requirement for lead release lead selection. Uh, and from my experience this time, coming from just enhancements, I think I was lacking on a lot of other knowledge from other roles, which I had like a great team, so they helped me learn quickly and help them better in turn. So definitely, enhancements is not the only role that's definitely required for release lead. No, that's not true. And the only reason why I added was just to clarify that bit. Uh, I can maybe add that to the lead selection documentation, but we'll maybe discuss it later again how to add it better.
Sounds
That's all.
good. Now I think I need to find the line in what we'll do different from what we talked about at the mid-cycle retro. I know we talked about this first one and this second one. Um, Definitely this one. Mm, I think this is maybe. So Cat's not on the call. Drew, did you add this one recently, or was this part of the mid-cycle retro as well?
No, I just added this.
Okay, perfect. So that helps me figure out then where the new items begin. I
I
think
think
it
the one
begins with,
from cat was also not discussed last.
yeah, I think you're right. Okay. So consider removing the section in the docs timeline regarding building the reference docs. Okay. So that will capture as an action item on the board. That's just a quick pickup task for someone to go do with the docs handbook. I'll get that added to the board after this. And then it looks like same thing with the one that Drew added here, just updating the docs handbook. Is there anything you wanted to add there, Drew, or should we just add this to our task tracking board?
Yeah, I mean, I could add this. If that's the board, I could add the task myself too. But the
I'll
only
send
thing,
you the board. I'm working with the SIG leads still on getting it made public because I just created
oh,
it after KubeCon and I don't have permissions to make it not private. So I think it's still private. You might have access by virtue of being in the org, but I'll work with the SIG leads to get that figured out. But yes, we want to use that in the future for like tracking these action items rather than in these docs because if they're just in these docs, I will certainly forget them. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so to make a long story short, as we've got, as we went through the release cycle and had our own tracking on docs, deadlines, there were a few of them that were unclear to the shadow team. So I mentioned to Kat, I think there's an opportunity to have a clear table added into the handbook. So that's something I'd be willing to help with.
Good. Sweet. We'll add that to the board. Current process for feature blog opt-in sometimes results in feature blogs for KEPs that are relatively minor. Yes. This is something that I've thought about for a little bit too. And Priyanka, I imagine it's going to come up for you as well. By nature of the opt-in process and the major themes of the release being determined by the SIG, the SIGs put major themes forward. It does result in major themes that could be a little skewed. It's the SIGs are working very specifically within the boundary of their SIG and their code, and sometimes don't have that like outside perspective, and so it ends up kind of shaping the major themes in a specific way. I found that when I was doing like interviews and stuff following the release, I ended up kind of selecting my own major themes after talking with some folks about understanding like what's most impactful at a broad project level. I do think we aren't going to be able to set feature blogs in a way that is we can't require a feature blog unless we're gonna write it. We can't, like, that's overhead. We can't demand a SIG write a feature blog. We can request it, but we can't require it. Priyanka.
Yeah, I had a comment on the discussion before it, and I'll come to the feature blog one as well. So for me, the signal about what actually should be included in major themes, for example, for post-release discussions, I got that from feature blog PRs, the review and discussion happening on those PRs. I got an idea of what actually is a breaking change or what is really a change that we definitely want to highlight in the release blog, for example. And that's how I came up with my list of major themes that I want to discuss for this particular cycle. But that's like, I just got that signal. I don't think that's a reliable way to just say, read the reviews or keep an eye on the feature blog PRs to get that signal. I think that's not the way. So I also don't know what's a better way to get this. And coming back to the feature blog, I think we had this issue this time as well, where I think SIG leads or kept honors did not feel like or did not opt in for feature blog, but after a while we realized we really need some sort of documentation, maybe in the forms of docs or feature blog. So it entirely ends up being how well aware we are of the changes coming out of a KEP, and then taking a call whether we need a feature plug. If it's, for example, a breaking change that's coming out and nobody has opted for docs or feature plug, then it is our responsibility as release team to push that. And but yeah, again, we can't force people in otherwise cases. Yeah.
And then I see Abigail has a hand up as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in that I think it'd be helpful. This might be documented somewhere. That we kind of write out maybe like a checklist or some sort of way to see like what the major themes are, like what would qualify as a major theme. This is probably documented. I'm just not sure where it is. Just to help blog folks who are working on a PR, it might be helpful for us. I was from the comms team, and when we added a note asking teams to opt in, maybe giving some additional questions of like what are the kinds of things that would need a blog, like in our messaging there. Just to give a little more context, because I don't know what major themes are in the context of Kubernetes. And people can nominate, like the SIGs nominate what they think are major themes, but as a person on the comms team, I don't have any guidelines to say that they are right or wrong as being minor, or like, you know what I mean? Like, are they actually as major themes as the SIG thinks, to then put it forward to the blog after that? Like, I don't have that perspective. And like you were saying, they have more of a perspective as internal to the SIG as something's really important to them, but then I don't know how to have like extrapolate that to the rest of the community while putting it into the blog, or maybe pushing back and asking them more gently in a nice way to write a blog on something, not requiring it, but presenting them with the idea that maybe the community needs a blog if they're able to do that. So that's my 2 cents there.
Thank you. I see Priyanka has a hand up, and then we'll go to Carol after that.
I just want to add a few things that I felt helped me to come up with major themes. One of them was definitely if any cap is bringing breaking changes to the release, that's definitely up there for major themes. Another thing, personally, I felt with a cap this cycle, uh, that was in discussion for like almost 7-8 cycles right now, and that was graduated to alpha this cycle in 129. So that's also a major theme for me because it has been the most anticipated. So that could be like one of the questions we can add into our checklist, like if this particular feature has been in work for a very long time and finally have graduated to a certain stage this cycle, just like one of the few prompts we can add. And finally, if a SIG feels there was a major feature that was graduated to GA, that could also be another prompt. Yeah, so just putting out some prompts if if you want to document it somewhere, if it's not already documented.
Sounds good. Carol?
Yeah, I was thinking about the current process of feature block that maybe we have some mandatory that in each hour call of the release thing we discuss this cap is mandatory because maybe it's some important deprecation or some important major change, and we decided we need that the feature block is mandatory. This help us to the communications teams to push more and say to the owner of the cap, this cap is checked as a mandatory for a blacklist, and we need to really push the feature block. Yeah, I think maybe this criteria maybe could help us. Just
I think this is all good info to pass on to the 130 comms team. Yeah, I think it looks like the next comment here. Fred, do you wanna speak to this?
Yes. So this is something that we've been discussing because of the release notes process, and I'll try to make it as short as possible. So in the release notes handbook, we have a section that indicates that we need to open the major themes discussion on GitHub, and its release notes that starts that issue then gets filled by all the SIGs. We go after the SIGs, etc. And I think that it's safe to say that that collection is important essentially for the release article that comes does for the release, right? The one that will be published as a blog. Why do I say this? Because I've checked, and since 1.25 was the last release that in which the actual release notes contained a major themes section. So there was a discussion around that for 126, and it was omitted, and that continued to up until this point. The reason likely being that I think that this collecting the major themes was for release notes, perhaps because there wasn't actually a release article in the early days, so that got under the scope of release notes. But with comms making the release article, it sort of made less sense for the same information to be duplicated in the release notes. But the actual handbooks never changed. So we have a situation now which is a bit strange, because release notes is responsible for opening the discussion and pinging the SIGs for content that it's actually not used by release notes. In this specific release, and after some discussions with past release note leads as well, what we did, and obviously after talking with Priyanka as well, was to simply add a major themes section with a small paragraph that links to the release announcement, which I think helps in still keeping the release announcement and the major themes available without all the issues that can actually happen with trying to duplicate the same content in both, and obviously having to manage changes and corrections in both at the same time. So I think that we can obviously fix the handbooks to change what we're doing, but I think that what we want to do is something that should be clarified. Do we actually want to remove the major themes completely from the release notes? Do we want to keep a link to the release article, or do we want to keep the content duplicated in both? Either way, we need to update the handbooks to make the process clearer.
I'll just respond to that real quick, and then I'll pass to Priyanka. I think having a link to the blog is great. Personally, I think I view the release notes as more of an official artifact that is tied to the release. The blog is a blog, and it's the content is great, and it packages it in a digestible format, but the release notes are tied to the GitHub release. And so I think I agree. I think duplicating the content is maybe not the best approach, but I think the link, I think that's great. Priyanka.
Yeah, I just hand raised to +1 to add a link to the major themes or whatever section we want to include in our
Sounds
release
good.
notes. Yeah.
And I think this brings about a broader conversation too. This SIG and the team in the past, like historically, has had, I said for a long time now, it's like hard to change a process while you're operating within that process. And by nature of the rotation of this team, oftentimes even leads don't feel empowered to change processes because it's your first time leading a team. You don't want to rock the boat too much. I think if there's pieces of processes that you're following on this team that aren't working, change them. You have my permission as a certified nobody to change these processes that aren't working. Feel empowered to just try stuff like this. and don't feel beholden to the way that we've done things. It's very easy to fall into that trap. So I think, yeah, it's great. Add the link. Yeah, +1. With that, I will pass to Kristen. It looks like this is along a similar line here. And yeah, to what I just said, like if there are parts of the major themes collection process that aren't working, try something different next cycle. Kristen, I'll let you speak to this.
Oh, I just added that as a follow-on comment to Fred's issue there. Certainly we can formalize that comms, works on the major themes collection, because it seems like maybe it's more of a historical thing that it's currently with the release notes team. I was on the release notes team many releases ago in 1.16, I think, and it seemed like that was kind of some extra work that maybe didn't so much fit with the release notes team. So we could certainly take it on formally. We just, I think we struggled a bit this release, and I'm sure Carol can speak to this, with determining, what the major themes were and like what the process for determining that is. So I think, we're happy to take that on as a responsibility, just with the knowing more about the process for determining the major themes.
Sounds good. That oh
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
I will add only my comments about the major themes, that for this release, we take in considerations all the caps in the release notes and try to highlight the main caps for each SIG. And how this was the way that we create the blog, because right now you can see that they are ordered by general available, beta and alpha, but it's because we put in consideration all the caps that is in the release notes and try to highlight, asking each SIG what is the main topics. No? Okay, yeah, that's only to talk about the major themes, that how we try to resolve in this release.
Sounds good. Priyanka, I see you've got a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to Federico and Kristen both. So do we want to take any action items on particularly these two? Maybe number one, to formalize or document the bit that we will going forward include a link to the major theme section from the release blog and release notes, or whatever we
Yep.
agree to. Yeah, thank you, Fred. And to Kristen for 130, like, do we want to document a few guidelines or prompts on how to uh, reach out to SIGs while determining what are the major themes? And this bit of taking over, in general, major themes collection from release notes. Do we want to have a tracking issue for that? Or maybe a PR right away if we have a consensus? I don't know what would be the better way to bring a consensus. If you both feel,
Yeah.
as release notes for 129, release notes lead and comms lead for 129, you both think that's the right direction, I think I am good with it.
Yeah. I've started a PR for the handbook for release notes. If it's agreeable, I can also add some initial comments on the comms one, for example, and create a single PR to an issue that will open up the discussion. Even if it gets changed, at least it will be a reflection of the discussion that we have here. So moving the opening and the collection of major themes from release notes to comms, and updating the release notes handbook with what needs to be done to add the major theme section with a link to that. So I can take that on, or I can take the release notes part and someone else can take the comms part. It's all fine by me.
Kristen, do you want to take the comms part, or
Yes.
anybody from? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, that's all. And thank you for
Awesome.
the discussion.
Yeah, with that, I think that brings us to the end of the retro with 15 minutes to spare. Really appreciate everyone's contributions, not only to the release, but to the retro. I see Sriram has a hand up, and then we'll go to Priyanka after that.
Yeah, hey, I missed on adding this to the retro doc, but I believe Nina had like mentioned the issue regarding the automation around like getting the code PRs associated with the KEP, as well as which I believe Priyanka mentioned sometime back, as well as the kep.yaml file. And like Nina had previously shared project done by Sander, which is KEP-T or KEP, I'm not sure, the CLI tool for managing KEPs. And I see that there are two other like KEP-CTL and KEPify scripts which are inside the enhancements repo. And I think there was a discussion about merging your code into the enhancements repo. I wanted to sort of bring that up.
Yeah, I think that's something worth exploring. It's, the kept CLI is something that I worked on when I was enhancements lead back in 124, I think.
Three.
Yeah, it was just the main goal behind it was to be able to run a CLI command that would validate a kept to see if it met the requirements for both enhancements freeze and then, track associated PRs and stuff. I haven't had the bandwidth to continue working on it, but my hope always is that there are, future enhancements teams and folks that want to, that are interested in picking it up or find some value in it. If there is desire to get that merged into, the existing code that's in the enhancements repo, I think that's definitely something we can explore. Priyanka.
Yeah, I actually had a different one, but I'll also add to Sriram's discussion right now. So one thing, Xander's tool, I had spent some time on Kepti, I think after 125. So uh, Kepti tool actually looks at the open issues. So all, not just the merged state of Keps in K enhancements repo, but also the open issues and PRs. So that might help us with few discussions that came out this cycle where people maybe wanted to get information from the issue description or get some meta from kep.yaml file. I have done some work. I'm also not sure whether I'll have the bandwidth to continue working on that, but if any of you need like a session or two just to sit down and brainstorm, I am very much open to that early 2024, Jan or something. So I can do a few sessions there. Um, I'll wait if we are okay with this particular topic before bringing the next one.
Yeah, I believe I would have bandwidth for working on that. I am planning to apply for the enhancements team again in the next release. So I guess I can take some time and get familiar with the existing, like whatever work that you all have done before we can like organize the brainstorming session or the call that you mentioned, and maybe we can post this in the release enhancements channel as well for other folks who might be interested.
Yeah, I'll also suggest maybe to bring this in SIG release weekly meeting uh, to get some idea of what is the current use of KEP-CTL tool right now, which is part of K enhancements, because I know that that particular tool is used by prod readiness or PRR reviewers team to I don't know what kind of stats, but uh, if if adding any more thing hinder the current usage or it's going to be an improvement, let's have that kind of discussion as well in forums which are more appropriate af- just to have a better discussion or better idea of what's the current usage of capctl right now. So maybe like bringing this in sig release team meetings would be a good start. Jeremy is there from pro readiness group and can lead us to other places if required.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I had just one item to bring for 130 team. There was a discussion to align test freeze milestone with release branch and release CI board dashboard creation uh, for 130 and onwards. So just a bit of context in 129, I think um, we created the release branch, release hyphen 129, and CI dashboards release 129 release blocking and informing test grid dashboards much after test freeze milestone. And that was, I think, not ideal because we were not getting any release specific signal as soon as we were in test freeze milestone. So I think one of the requests came from seg leads was to right away align the creation of release branch and CI signal dashboards uh, as soon as we hit test freeze. So if Grace, you are on the call, that's just something for 130. That's all from me.
Sounds good. Well, with that, I think we'll wrap up. Getting close-ish to time. Again, definitely really appreciate everyone's time on the release and contributing to the retro. For the shadows, I will be sending out a end of cycle survey on how your experience went, and I'll mention this in the next meeting as well. But yeah, thank you everyone. Look forward
And-
to continuing to work with y'all.
And I just wanted to close this with maybe a question: do we need a retrospective 3? That's part of my checklist. So if we don't need this, we can take a decision and call it
I
done.
will create a thread on the SIG release Slack channel and we can vote.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye bye.
you.
Thanks, Sander, for
Bye.
hosting. Thank you,
Have a good
everyone.
day.